There is a photograph, a silverback gorilla, 400 pounds of pure muscle and instinct, arms wrapped around a man, not threatening him, holding him, like he never wanted to let go. People who see that photograph always ask the same question: what on earth happened between these two? Here is what makes it stranger. Gorillas do not do this. Not with strangers, not with researchers, not even with humans who have spent years earning their trust. This kind of tenderness, this kind of raw recognition, it is not supposed to happen, and yet there is a man named Karim, a ranger deep in the forests of the Democratic Republic of Congo. 12 years before that photograph was taken, he made a decision. His supervisors called it reckless. His colleagues called it insane. It saved a life. But what that gorilla did when she saw him again, after all those years apart, nobody had a clean explanation for it. Not the scientists, not the veterinarians, nobody. We are going to tell you everything, from the very beginning. But we have to warn you, this is not a simple rescue story. This goes much deeper than that. This cuts right to the heart of what it means to truly know another living creature. Stay with us. The Virunga forest does not prepare you. No documentary, no photograph, no description from someone who has stood inside it. Nothing prepares you for what it actually feels like. The trees rise so high they seem to belong to a different sky. The air is thick and cool, wet bark, ancient earth, something green and alive that has no name. Sound travels strangely there. A bird call from half a mile away arrives sharp and close. Your own footsteps disappear, swallowed by decades of fallen leaves. This is where Karim lived, where he worked, where he understood things that could not be taught in a classroom. He had been a ranger at Virunga National Park for 3 years when the call came in. 31 years old, lean, quiet, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. He had grown up at the edge of this very forest. Unlike rangers who came from the capital, from universities, from NGOs with logos on their vehicles, Karim had grown up treating the forest as a neighbor. Not a resource, not a wilderness to manage, a neighbor. He could read its silence. He knew when it was calm and when it was not. And on the morning this story begins, the forest was not calm. A poaching incident. Northern sector. Anti-poaching units moved in fast. There was a confrontation, shots fired. By the time Karim's team reached the site, the poachers were long gone, but they had left something behind. Tucked against the base of a strangler fig, barely visible beneath dead leaves, a gorilla infant, female, 8 to 14 months old, her mother gone, her troop scattered into the deep forest, terrified by the gunfire. She was completely alone, and she was barely breathing. Here is what nobody on that team could have known yet. That tiny dying infant was about to change one man's entire life. The veterinary team gave her a 20% chance of survival, and that number was generous. Severely dehydrated, malnourished, despite being separated from her mother no more than 48 hours, small lacerations on her hands, a fall, most likely, a desperate scramble through underbrush in the dark. When her eyes opened, they were glassy, unfocused. She did not cry. Gorilla infants in distress almost always vocalize. She was too weak even for that. They named her Amara. It means grace. Nobody said out loud why that name felt right. Naming them always made everything harder. Naming them meant you were already hoping. The protocol was clear. Orphaned infant in critical condition, transferred to rehabilitation sanctuary immediately. Trained staff, controlled environment, other orphaned gorillas for socialization. The ranger's job was simple. Stabilize, hand her off, move on. Karim had done this before. He believed in the protocol, but the transport vehicle was 6 hours away. The road was washed out from recent rains, a maintenance problem that had been promised fixed for months. The sanctuary's own vehicle was already committed to another emergency, a snared juvenile male in the southern sector. 6 hours, in the condition Amara was in. 6 hours was not a delay. 6 hours was a death sentence. Karim looked at Odette, the young veterinary assistant beside him. 4 months in the field. He saw the same calculation running behind her eyes. They both knew what the odds looked like if they simply waited. What Karim did next violated 3 separate regulations in the Ranger Code of Conduct. He did not transfer Amara to a transport crate. He did not maintain the required distance protocols for handling wild primates. He did not file a report before acting. Instead, he sat down on the forest floor, with the dying infant gorilla in his arms. He held her against his chest, let her feel his heartbeat, kept her warm with his body heat, and he talked to her. Low, steady, continuous, not really words, just sound, just presence. Odette watched. She did not stop him. She could not have said why. Amara's breathing, shallow, broken, wrong, slowly, impossibly, began to find a rhythm. It took 2 hours, remember that. 2 hours on the forest floor. Because what happens at the end of this story connects directly back to those 2 hours. That evening, Kareem filed an honest report. Every detail, the physical contact, the duration, the full deviation from protocol. He submitted it knowing exactly what it might cost him. His supervisor, Felix, 11 years running ranger operations in Virunga, read the report twice, called Kareem in, sat across from him in silence. Then he said, "She is alive." Not a question. "Yes," Kareem said. "You understand why these protocols exist." "I do. Disease transmission in both directions. Habituation complications for reintegration." Felix looked at the report again. Another long silence. Then he closed the folder. Amara was transported to the Senkwekwe Center the next morning, one of the only facilities in the world equipped for orphaned mountain gorillas. She arrived stable, weak but alive. Kareem drove the transport vehicle himself. When they arrived, he did not go inside. He handed Amara off at the gate, watched the staff carry her in, then sat in the vehicle for a long time before driving back. He would later say he did not know exactly what he felt in that moment. Not quite sadness, not quite relief, something between them, the specific weight of doing something right without knowing if it would be enough. And that is when everything changed. The sanctuary coordinator, Dr. Elise Fontaine, a Belgian primatologist with 30 years in the field, came back out to the vehicle. She had reviewed the field report. She had seen the photographs. She said, "You did something the textbooks say should not have worked." Kareem said nothing. "Her cortisol levels are almost normal." Dr. Fontaine paused. For an infant in her situation, that level of stress suppression should not be possible without pharmacological intervention. Another pause. Whatever she heard in those 2 hours, whatever she felt, it kept her alive. And you remember the photograph we showed you at the beginning. We are not there yet. Not even close, because what Dr. Fontaine said next set the course for the next 12 years. She said, "Would you be willing to come back?" As part of her recovery team. The work of raising an orphaned gorilla is not what people imagine. People hear it and picture something warm, a small dark face peering up, soft fur, wonder. And yes, those moments exist. Kareem would be the first to tell you, but the daily reality is something else. It is grueling, relentless, emotionally exhausting work that never stops. Infant gorillas need contact almost constantly. Their psychological wounds are not always visible. The trauma of losing a mother, losing an entire social group in a single terrifying night, it does not simply fade. It resurfaces, without warning, in violent regressions, in night terrors, in an inability to connect with other gorillas who have been through the same thing. Amara had all of it. For 8 months at Senkwek, she refused to engage with the other orphaned gorillas in the socialization program. She would sit at the far edge of the group enclosure, watching them, never joining, a detached, hollow wariness that the entire staff found heartbreaking. Dr. Fontaine had seen withdrawal before. She had never seen it last this long. There were days Kareem questioned everything. Had his decision in the forest saved her, or simply stranded her, kept her alive but left her trapped between two worlds, not wild enough to go back, not trusting enough to move forward? His supervisor Felix visited once during this stretch, found Kareem outside Amara's enclosure before sunrise. "You blame yourself," Felix said. Kareem was quiet for a moment. "I think about what her life would have been, with her troop, her mother." He paused. "Whether any version of this is what was supposed to happen for her." Felix sat down beside him. "Wrong question," he said. "The troop is gone. The mother is gone. The only question is what happens now." And for a long time the honest answer was, nobody knew. Progress was not a straight line. Small gains vanished in setbacks. A respiratory infection in her second year nearly killed her. Her immune system, already compromised from those first desperate weeks, struggled hard. Kareem sat through 3 nights of that illness with her, Felix looking the other way, Dr. Fontaine giving reluctant medical clearance. The infection cleared, but the road ahead still looked impossibly long. And then, slowly, without announcement, the way real change usually comes, something began to shift. What happened next, nobody on the team expected. Not even Dr. Fontaine. And she had seen everything. Amara was 11 years old, grown now, large, powerful, deeply watchful. The withdrawn infant was still visible in her, in the way she kept to the edges, the way she chose high ground where she could observe without being seen. But she had found a fragile place inside the sanctuary community. Not central, not fully trusting, but a place. Karim had been away for 8 months. A regional conservation training program had taken him out of Virunga entirely. He had followed Amara's reports from a distance, but he had not been there. He came back on a Tuesday, early October. The air smelled exactly the way it always had. Wet bark, something green and alive with no name. He stood outside the enclosure fence. Amara was 40 meters away, back to the group, facing the tree line. She turned. Dr. Fontaine was in a research blind nearby, purely by coincidence. She was the one who timed it later. 4 seconds. 4 seconds from the moment Amara turned her head to the moment she was moving, not charging. Anyone who works with gorillas learns in their first week to read that difference. The lowered head, the lateral sway, the compressed explosive energy of a threat display. This was not that. This was faster, more direct, something that looked to the 2 junior staff members watching, who did not yet know what they were seeing, like pure panic. Amara crossed the enclosure in a straight line. She hit the fence section nearest to Karim, pressed herself against the wire, and then she reached through. Her hand, the hand of a fully grown female gorilla, 12 years of muscle and survival and loss, reached through that fence, and she found his arm, and she held it. Karim stood completely still. He did not pull back. He did not speak. He let his heartbeat do exactly what it had done 12 years ago on the floor of that forest. Steady, calm, present. Dr. Fontaine said afterward she had spent 30 years studying great ape behavior. She could not fully account for what she witnessed that morning. Recognition memory in great apes is documented. Emotional bonding is documented. Attachment theory across the primate family is still being mapped. But this went beyond what any of that had prepared her for. She knew him, Dr. Fontaine said. Not his face necessarily, not even his smell. After all that time, she knew something about him, something she had been carrying. Think about what that means. 12 years, and she had been carrying something from those 2 hours on a forest floor when she was too weak to even cry. There is a version of this story that ends with a tidy lesson, a bow tied around it, something that tells you exactly what to think and how to feel. This is not that version, because what happened between Karim and Amara does not fit neatly into any category science has fully named. It is not simply about animal intelligence, though her memory is extraordinary. It is not simply about human compassion, though his was real and costly and consistent. Fewer than 1,000 mountain gorillas remain in the world, each one irreplaceable, each one carrying something inside them that we do not yet have the science or the language to fully describe. They did not evolve to be studied, or saved by humans, or threatened by them, or held by them in desperate moments on dark forest floors, and yet here we are, all of us, tangled together in ways none of us fully chose. Karim stayed with the Senkwekwe Center for 4 more years, after that October morning. He helped reintegrate 2 younger gorillas, orphaned under circumstances just like Amara's, back into semi-wild habitat south of Mikono. Amara was not a reintegration candidate, too shaped by her years at the sanctuary. That is not a failure. It is not a success. It is simply what is true. She lives well. She is healthy. She holds her quiet place at the edge of the group, watchful as she has always been, at peace. Karim works now with a conservation education organization, training the next generation of community rangers across Central Africa. He talks about Amara when he speaks to young rangers, not as a story about heroism, not about breaking protocol and getting lucky. He tells it as a story about paying attention, about the difference between following a procedure and actually seeing the living creature in front of you, about what becomes possible when you are willing to sit on the floor of a dark forest, no agenda, no guarantee, no professional distance, and let something trembling and frightened feel your heartbeat, and simply wait. That photograph still circulates. People still stop when they see it, still ask the same question, what on earth happened between these two? Now you know, and when you see it again, that enormous hand reaching out, that quiet man standing still, that moment that science struggles to explain, understand what you are actually looking at. You are not looking at a miracle. You are looking at what happens when patience, real, costly, years-long patience is finally answered.